All right, everybody, welcome back to another Shots from the Winchester podcast presented by Greencastle. I have a really, really special guest with us today, Kevin Heilman, who is a woodworker, a veteran, and we're going to learn all about him and what he does. So welcome, Kevin.
Hi, glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So looking forward to learning all about what you do. We can already see behind you that you've got some stuff that we're going to probably talk about. So Kevin, I guess before we get into how you're a veteran, I wanted to kind of tell the audience about how you and I met. Interestingly, I was scrolling through TikTok and found you, and you have these really great videos that you do honoring our service members and those killed in action and Gold Star families. So I think what you do is incredible, and I'm so excited to share this with our audience. So I had to mention that, your TikTok's outstanding, and I'd love for people to give you a follow.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us about your service and you being a veteran? How long did you serve? What did you do when you were in?
Well, I joined the Navy on delayed entry in 91, but I didn't go to boot camp until summer of 1992, and then I was on a 4-year enlistment, and I went to school and became an avionics tech, aviation electronics technician. So that's I worked on H-60s. I did 2 deployments while I was in, but yeah, 92 to 96. That was my time in the service.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service. I appreciate it. What's one thing that you took away from that service, like a lesson learned, or one thing that you feel like you took away from it?
Boy, oh boy, it's a really great question. Over the years, I don't think it was a lesson that I realized at the time, but it was something that I realized later. Was that the depth of meaning of military service for every member? It's different for everybody. Everybody serves for their different purpose, and that's always really that's something that really it became apparent to me, ironically, kind of after I was in, and kind of looking back on my service and kind of realizing that it's something that really kind of a post realization, and it really impacted me.
We talked to a lot of veterans here, so it's really interesting to see the skills and the things that they took away from their time, and it's different for everybody. So very cool stuff. So you spent time in the military, then you came out, and what did you do from there?
Well, I went to college initially and got my engineering degree. I'm from South Dakota originally, so I came back to my home state and started on my engineering degree, the coursework, and I graduated from South Dakota State University in 2000 then. So then I started my career in engineering. Started in South Dakota doing semiconductors, and then worked for a few different companies, and currently I'm employed as I have a day job. I'm a controls engineer at a manufacturer that makes rooftop HVAC equipment. So large scale HVAC equipment. So yep.
Yeah, outstanding. And being an engineer is very impressive. But
Thank you.
Outside of that, you got a side gig going on, and you're a woodworker. So how did you get into that?
Well, it's I love to create things, and it's always stuck with me. And before we could really, I've been married for coming up on 22 years, 23 years. But been so wonderful, I've lost track. But married to a wonderful woman named Michelle, and we met in college, and so she's been tolerating me all these years. We have 3 wonderful children. And along the way, there was always the focus on, for a long period of time in our marriage, Michelle stayed home with the kids. So we didn't have a lot of extra money, for extra furniture and that sort of thing. And I always dreamed of starting to acquire more tools. So I would buy magazines when I had the chance and start reading up on wood magazines, woodworking magazines, and start researching, understanding what would be the best tools to start with, and kind of came up with a plan. And then once we moved here to Minnesota, we had the space then, and I was able to start acquiring tools, and start to put together a shop. And that's largely what you see behind me here. And the first thing that I started building was furniture for us. For years in our marriage, we never had an actual headboard and actual formal nightstands. All the money was, kind of any extra money was all about, family and the kids and stuff like that. Sure. So we just kind of, you just kind of make do. But then I was able to start building stuff. So when we lay down to go to sleep at night, we're surrounded by things that I've built, and I love that feeling. But it was a bit of a road getting there and acquiring the equipment. I was trying to be very, very thoughtful and budget minded with my equipment. So I was very careful with my purchases and started acquiring it, and then got it and started building furniture. And my kids, I've built all their headboards, desks, nightstands, dressers. So a lot of furniture. But then eventually run out of need for headboards, right? And there's only so many dressers you need. And so I started looking for other things because now I have all this great equipment and I have the start, the foundation of a great wood shop. And I thought, well, what can I build next? So I started looking at building flags. So the very first flag that I built, I thought, wow, I really like doing this. I got the dimensions all correct on it and everything. I started building those and then selling them. And then I formed it was at that point I thought, well, I should form a business because I'm selling these products now. So I formed Kevin Heilman Woodworking LLC, and it just kind of started from there. And that's where it grew.
So you were truly self-taught, which is, I mean,
lot, yes.
Yeah, you're reading books, sure. You're looking at videos, but there's not somebody that you're an apprentice for. You're coaching you. You really taught yourself, which is pretty incredible. So I don't know that I could ever do that. I don't have the kind of brain that understands how to like build things and put things together. So I'm always very impressed with that. So then what's the most challenging thing about woodworking, and then also about running a side hustle, because this isn't your full-time gig?
There's one of the hardest things, honestly, one of the biggest hurdles I had to get over was I'm incredibly hard on myself. I really pour a lot of love into what I do, and I'm constantly challenging myself. Am I doing good enough? Am I honing my skills well enough to make a product that's going to be worth someone else's hard-earned money? When I go to sell it, I don't want to just put something together for the sake of saying, hey, I built something and here it is. They're paying me for my best effort. And I say that frequently on my TikTok lives, and they're paying me for my best effort. They're not paying me for my, hey, I hope this is okay. So I really, that's really the biggest challenge is honestly is myself in this. It's making sure, am I doing something that is deserving of, someone's money when they pay me. And I take it as a compliment when someone wants to buy something from me, and I take it as a very high compliment when somebody buys something from me that they want to give as a gift to someone who is special to them. I take that as a very high compliment, because it's like, okay, something that I've created right here on this workbench they feel that is worthy of being a gift for someone that they really care for. That really strikes me. So that's, the other challenges are just finding the time and making the time. My wife, Michelle, is wonderful with taking care of everything else in the house so that she can be a woodworking widow, so that I can be down in the shop. And because she knows it's very important to me, the work that I'm doing now, which is the ribbon rack. She knows, and she knew the flags were very important to me, and she knows the ribbon racks are very important. So she does everything else, and allows me to do this. And I recognize her all the time for it. And so she's the wind beneath my wings, I always say.
That's so important to have a spouse that supports what you do in any role, and also to call out military spouses, right? So like that's a whole role in itself too. So yeah,
Absolutely.
mean, that's incredible. So how did then your time in the military help you to become a business owner? Like, what skills do you feel like you took away from your time serving that kind of apply to what you're doing now?
Commitment. It was that commitment to do it. And I think that's really what it was, that focus and commitment and sticking with it. It's like, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do everything I can to do it. It's not going to be a half-hearted attempt. So it was that commitment to really dig in and make this happen, and then of course, then that fed into, like I just mentioned, just like, okay, am I doing something that's good enough? So you can kind of see how it was, some inner conflict as I was doing it, but the commitment remained true, and I stayed with it and disciplined about it to really keep pushing. And now the fan base that have grown on TikTok has really adds a lot of motivation to it, for me, and just beyond even just the woodworking. So yeah, it's those are the things I think that were probably the biggest challenges.
Yeah. So you've gotten into making these ribbon racks. Where did that idea come from? Because we do see a lot of wooden flags, and I love all of them. I love just like seeing all these veterans be creative, but this is something I have never seen before. So where'd the idea come from?
That's a great question. A lot of people actually ask that on my lives, like, how did you start doing this? Where did this come from? So I was making flags as you mentioned, and as talking about earlier. And I'm proud of the flags that I make. I really enjoy making American flags. I'm very, very proud. I'm very proud to have served our country. And so building those flags, like that was very, just very meaningful, but then as you look out there, you do some quick searching and you find out there is an awful lot of great makers out there, and they're making fantastic flags. They really are. They're beautiful. The proportions are right. The stars look beautiful. They're everything. They're doing things with framing or personalizing it with, out on the stripes. They have CNC machines that can personalize them, and which I don't have, and I don't think I'll ever acquire one of those. Just because I don't think the business would go that direction. But I was seeing a lot of competition, and I thought, what is making my flags special? Why would somebody want to buy mine versus anybody else's? So I started looking at making like red line flags for firefighters, and where they have the different colored stripe below the union on the flags to represent different emergency responders and that sort of thing. Well, I thought the first flag that I did was, I thought, why isn't anybody making a military ribbon on that stripe to do the colors for that to scale? In my flags, the larger ones are 37 inches wide. So I did the math on it. And the first one that I did was the Vietnam service ribbon. And on a subdued flag, which is like a black and tan flag, and then you do those colors with the green on the ends, the yellow, and the 3 red stripes in the middle, that the Vietnam service ribbon, the colors just, oh my gosh, they just popped and it looked beautiful. And I thought, I just stood back from it and thought, oh my goodness, I have something here. This is neat. And so I sold several of those because people had an uncle or a father or grandfather who served in Vietnam, and they would get that flag. And then I thought, I can do this. I wonder if I make a ribbon rack. And it just, I don't know how the idea just kind of formed in my head, but I thought, let me make my own ribbon rack as a proof of concept. So I did. And at the same time, you have to understand I was also getting involved with 3D printing, which allows me to do the devices. So I have a Battle E, for example. I was, since I was Navy, we have a Battle E. The squadron that I was in earned one of those. Southwest Asia service ribbon usually has at least one, 2, or 3 stars. So I had to make a star. My Sea Service deployment ribbon had a star. My good conduct but anyway, so it's my 6 ribbons. I did that as a proof of concept, and it came out really neat. And I thought, okay, I acquired the colors that I need and kind of started developing my staining process to get those unique colors for the ribbons. And it all started kind of coming together when I built that. And I thought, okay, now I've really got something here. This is neat. So it took about 1.5 years to develop the rest of the process, all the 3D all the 3D models, so I could print them and get good at printing them. So the oak leaf cluster, the different sizes of stars, the hourglass, the Army Good Conduct bar, all those different devices. And got all the colors, the cut sheets for all the different ribbons, and started putting it all together before I launched the product last year, April of 22, March, April timeframe of 22. And it started picking up steam from there. Doing the cuts individually, getting them all as precise as I can, using a caliper for measuring. I use a tape measure as well. I mean, Stanley works in my shop too, but I use a machinist caliper, to really get down to the thousandths of an inch on my measurements to make sure that I'm, and then modifying my saws and jigs and fixtures for all of my equipment to basically retool my shop to make ribbon racks consistently. I didn't want to do it so that I could hope to do a few of them right. I wanted to make sure that every one of them I did, that I couldn't do it wrong. So that's why I really wanted to make sure that I'm going for that level of perfection on that and detail, because after all, they hammered that into us, right, in the service. Attention to detail. So it's like, all right, I'm making products for the most scrutinizing people on the face of the earth, military veterans, so it's the details have got to be right. These have got to look good. The devices have got to be, if they're going to be centered, it better be centered. It's right. It has to be the right size. It has to be proportionate to the ribbons. Each color band on the ribbons, that's got to be right. So it's making sure that I do that so that people can see that I'm putting that level of detail and attention to that in each of my ribbon racks.
And that's an incredible amount of detail that you have. So each color, is a different piece of wood. Is that correct? Like each of the, yeah, which I think is really very incredible. Just a different level of detail. Yeah, exactly. Yep. If you're watching, he's holding up a piece of the woods. That's why you have to tune into our YouTube so you can see it. But yeah, that level of detail, along with your 3D printing, which I didn't even think of when I looked at them. I don't know what I thought you made it with, but now, wow, you're 3D printing on top of it. So how long does it take to make a ribbon rack?
It varies with the complexity of the ribbons. There's some ribbons that have up to 35 individual pieces of wood. And then some of them are literally just a single piece of wood, like the Navy's good conduct. But so it's a bit of a variety there, and different saw setups. So the short answer is roughly about 20 minutes total touch time per ribbon. That includes staining that amount of wood. That includes processing the cuts, trimming everything on all the sides, and getting everything fit together, and then attaching it to the backer board. So it's about, on average, I think I'm around that 20-minute mark. It's kind of difficult to get like an actual tack time in terms of like measuring for process flow and stuff like that. But and understanding like that, because there's certain parts of the process I can batch, and everything else is literally just one piece at a time. So it's a mixture of different process types for this whole flow. So it kind of varies, but I think my best guesstimate is about 20 minutes per ribbon.
Okay. And what's the process for making a whole rack? Like, how do you start? Do you start with research, or how does that work?
Well, someone will reach out. They'll go to my website and say, hey, I'm interested in a quote. I'll reply to them and say, send me a picture, a detailed list, or a screenshot. There's some great, I got to give a shout out to usamm.com. That's an online, it's a site where you can go and get your ribbon racks made for your to wear on a uniform, or you can get like a sticker made of your ribbons. They have a really great program on there called Easy Rack Builder. You just click, it's very intuitive. You can just click through and build your ribbon rack and puts the details on there, and it actually follows the regs. So I use that quite a bit. I recommend other people use that if they want to send a screenshot to me and say, hey, this is what my ribbon rack looks like. It generates the list and it puts the devices on in the proper order. If you have multiple different types of devices, it puts them in the proper sequence and everything. It's really neat. So I got to give them a shout. So usamm.com, great website. So we'll basically, once I get to an understanding of what that ribbon rack looks like for a client, then I'll give them a quote based on the pricing. I'll send it to them, and they'll decide to move forward. Once they've made the payment, then I bring it to the shop. I get it into the production schedule, and once it comes up, I look at all the list of ribbons. I pull all the cut sheets, because there's a mil spec, or at least something I've generated in software to get the proper dimensions for each color band on the ribbon. So I get the whole list of colors that I'm cutting, and I set my saws for the dimensions, make all the cuts, put everything together, and then I send a picture to the client. I put the devices on it, send a picture to the client and say, is this correct? Does this look right? Do I have all your ribbons or all the devices on in the right spots, and that sort of thing? So every client gets that last chance to make a correction. And because once I glue everything down and nail it, it's pretty well set. There's really no changes after that. So, and then once they say, yep, that looks great, or if there's a slight tweak, or hey, that needs another star, that sort of thing, which has happened, we make that correction. I take another picture, send it, that sort of thing. Once we get approval, the final approval, then I take everything off of it. I glue it all down, I take all the ribbon pieces off of the backer board. I glue them down one at a time, nail them from the back, and get them all situated, let that dry, trim it, put backer boards on, put the frame on it, glue the devices on the front. And it sounds like a lot. It is. There's quite a bit to the process, but it's broken up over different stages for waiting for things to cure and that sort of thing. Sure.
So then you also make racks for Gold Star families, and
yes,
you receive donations to make these racks, right? So how do you find out about the racks of those soldiers or airmen or whoever it is? Like, how do you get the right information? How do you get that verification? Because sometimes family might not even know.
Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because through this whole process, some of the great people that I've encountered on this and that have become regular fans of the TikTok lives, there's a couple of them that they work in the awards section of their command. They're current active duty, or I think one's current active duty. The other one might be a veteran now. I think she's out of the service at this point, I think. Anyways, but there's a couple of folks that help out with that and will help kind of go through the criteria for certain ribbons. Like, hey, if they have this one, then they should have this one, depending on the time frame, that sort of thing. Like, hey, if they were in during this time, well, then this ribbon was active. If they were over there, they should have this. If they put boots on the ground, it's this ribbon as well. And so they can help. And they actually have. There's been some great cases of that. Matter of fact, case in point, there's a ribbon rack right behind me that is a Medal of Honor ribbon rack for Macario Garcia, a World War II Medal of Honor recipient. It's a fantastic story, and through this whole process, I've had the opportunity to learn about Macario Garcia, and how he became a recipient of the Medal of Honor and what he did, after the military. But his family wanted that ribbon rack made, and they didn't have all of his information. So the folks that joined on the lives were able to help navigate that and say, hey, there should also be an occupation ribbon. He was in the reserves. Hey, he should also get the National Defense, even though that only goes back to 1950. Well, it won't be for his World War II service. It'll be for his time in the reserves afterwards. Like, oh, perfect. So, and his reserve, Armed Forces Reserve ribbon. So they were able to make sure that he had all the ribbons. We found the documentation as well, because they knew when you go through like Texas National Guard or Army Reserves, there's different documents. It's not all just a DD-214. There's other document numbers for that, to make sure his family was able to find those proper documents and prove that, yep, he did actually have these extra ribbons. Now we make sure that his ribbon rack is fully correct. So in a case like that, it's a great example I just brought up and set there to kind of show. But through that process, Sean, he actually had 3 more ribbons that should belong on his proper ribbon rack. Macario passed away in 1972, so he can't speak for himself. We have to find that information for him and make sure that we're doing justice to him, and doing this proper to really honor his service and his legacy.
That's incredible. And that's incredible that you have a community online where you found these people who are able to help you too. Like, I just think that's so amazing. And I want to mention, you are not just building these ribbon racks, but you're also telling these people stories online. What got you into that?
That's a great question. The tribute videos, that is what I thought, a couple of things I want to say about the videos too, because the first thing, when I hear of something like that, my first thought is I almost want to roll my eyes. Something like that, like, oh gosh, is this just a sales thing? Is this just a marketing tool? There's times that people will ask, hey, that's an amazing video. How do I get one of those? And I'll answer it in the comments. But the whole point of those tribute videos is to tell the story of the veteran. And it's not, I never in those videos do I say, hey, come on over to, ribbonracks.com and you can order your ribbon rack. It's not a sales advertisement in that sense. It really is. It's a minute to 2 minute roughly video, to tell a brief story of someone's time in the military and where they might be today, and then the awards that they got, and then to thank them for their service, and put it to some music, and then put it out there, tag them in it, and everybody gets to see that and learn a little bit. And you see a lot of great comments on those. Are so supportive and positive, because people would be like, well, hey, I was in that group, or hey, I was I was in the CBs, or I was, hey, I'm from that town too, because that's what I usually start with. Like he left his hometown of Phoenix, Arizona in 2003 and went to boot camp at Paris Island, or that type of thing. So people, it kind of makes it relatable to a lot of people that view that video and like, hey, that's really not unlike my story if they went through a similar path. So it's neat. It just gets that story of that veteran out there. But then we thought, somebody reached out initially and said, hey, I'm a Gold Star father. I'd like to get one for my son. And it honestly, I'd never even thought of it. I'd started this whole process, and up until that point, I'd never thought of what would I do for a Gold Star parent. And it kind of hit me. I was kind of dumbstruck. I didn't like, gosh, I can't charge this guy for this. He lost his son. He's just getting something to honor his son. And I found out the story. The first one was for Patrick Deans, and he was killed 2 days before his 23rd birthday. He re-upped to go back and be with his team. Then he was on an off shift. He was in a building. He wasn't on watch, or at that time he was in a building nearby, and a few of his other team members were in that building. They were crashed out, getting ready to take duty later. A vehicle came in with a bomb on board, blew up the building, and it crushed him. It killed him that day. So we came up with, hold on. We have people start to post comments and say, you know what? Hey, I'll pay for his ribbon rack. Like, well, hold on. Let's figure out how we want to do this. And I thought, all right, now how do I had some discussion with a couple of people I kind of befriended on the TikTok lives, and kind of came up with a plan of just like, well, look, if people want to donate money, I'll create a link and people can donate. And people have. There have been some generous folks that have helped donate. They've donated money to help cover the material cost and the shipping cost. They usually ship UPS. And then I donate my time and any other shop consumables toward building that ribbon rack. So in the end, the Gold Star family doesn't pay a dime for that ribbon rack. They just get to receive it and put it up on the wall as a tribute to their fallen loved one. And that's what we do now. So now how do we select them? Well, now Mr. Deans, the father of Patrick Deans, reached out. He kind of reached out to us. We see people come through now, and if they have it on their profile page, or if they let themselves kind of be known like, hey, I'm a Gold Star parent, through some discussion, because we like to talk to veterans in that group. And by we, I mean just kind of the family of folks, my regulars that have kind of joined and stayed with me on this whole process. And they're a wonderful group. I couldn't have designed this if I wanted to. This is kind of just fell together and kind of fell into this thing. And it's a wonderful thing. When we're live, there's a group that's about a dozen folks that stay in there with me all the time. They help answer questions, and they'll kind of greet some of the other veterans that are coming through. And then through that process, we get to know who those Gold Star parents are and get to learn their stories. And if they start attending regularly, then I might reach out. I'll kind of ask some people like, hey, what's the story? Have you looked up anything on this fallen soldier? And then I'll reach out to that Gold Star parent and say, hey, you know who I am. You know what I do. Would you like a ribbon rack? Because I know that grief is a different path for everybody. I don't want to just assume that everybody would just be crazy about getting a ribbon rack, and just, they may be at a different spot, and I try to respect that. So I always ask. I never assume that they'll want one. Nobody's turned me down yet. But they usually respond and say, yeah, that would be amazing. And then I'll say, if you'd like to have a tribute video, there's no requirement. If you just want the ribbon rack, I'll just make it and ship it. No problem. But if you would like, I could do, or if you allow, I'll do a tribute video. And I haven't been turned down for that yet either. So it's worked out well for that. But then the best part of this is that once I can do that tribute video and get that word out there, then people are saying that fallen soldier's name.
Yes.
They're seeing that person's face. They're going to look them up and get that story. And that's, I think the video that you may have seen on TikTok was that one that we recently did for Specialist Albert Jacks.
Yes.
And that's gone, it's gotten a ton of views on TikTok, and it's his mom has just been, his mom's name is Kathy. And she's been absolutely floored by this. She just can't believe there's over 1.2 million people that have seen this video and now have said her son's name, know her son's story, seen her son's baby picture all the way up to where he was in uniform right before this incident happened in 2009. So it's been fantastic that way. But yeah, that's how I found Kathy that way. She just happened to come through, and we looked up her profile and kind of found out her story, reached out to her, and yeah, that's how that got started. And then the video was just kind of fell into place back in October of this year, and I put that out there, and it struck a chord with a lot of people, and it got very popular.
It did. I mean, you're doing such an amazing thing telling these stories, because like you said, it's another person saying their name, but I saw that and I was moved to send it to so many different people. I work with all veterans, sending it to people at work just so they can see. And I think what you're doing is so much more than just building a ribbon rack. You're telling these stories and they're not going to be forgotten, which is like a huge legacy, How do you remember the details in all of these people's stories? Because I've watched your videos, and you're such a great storyteller that it's like, are you reading off a script or a teleprompter, or are you just like naturally just very good at this? Because it's really very impressive.
I appreciate that. It's a lot of takes. There's a lot of attempts, a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor, we'll call it, that don't make the final edit. But so I do have some things that I'll jot down, and I'll put them up as cue cards behind the camera. And I just try to monitor my eye contact with them and stuff, so it doesn't, and I try not to sound too monotone, like I'm definitely reading something. I just usually have pointers on there, and that's how we get through the stories.
So you also do TikTok lives, right? You
Yes.
talk a lot about doing TikTok lives with veterans. How did you start doing this? Why do you think this is so important? Because when you and I talked before, you were like super passionate about having these lives, and that it brings people together and allows for veterans to have a place, like a sounding board. So talk about that.
Yeah, the live started. I had done a little bit of woodworking before, and I was able to get over 1,000 followers at that time, and I was able to go live on TikTok per their go live policies, which I don't know how that happened. Anyways, I had just enough to go live. So I started, and I was pretty shy at first, and I kind of, wasn't really, I didn't really have my A game in terms of live. I'm just a guy in my wood shop, and that's how I still feel. I'm just a woodworker. I'm just a woodworker. I'm an engineer by day. I'm a woodworker every other waking hour. So I started going live just to kind of show people what I'm doing. And I don't know, it just kind of never really had a set schedule. It was just kind of like, well, I could go live now, and I don't know how long I'll be on live for. And it kind of gradually started forming into this a routine thing. And I started seeing regular names coming in. So I would do it a couple times a week. And then I started like, okay, well, I should do it a few times a week. And seeing some names repeatedly in there, and then started getting a lot of requests for quotes from all that. And I thought, wow, okay, well, this is kind of working. It's getting some attention out there, and I was gaining some followers, and I'd post some videos here and there, and gain some more followers, and it just started kind of snowballing. But there was this core group of people that really stuck with me and have still been with me. And at some point in the video, before we end, I would like to name them and give them the credit that they're due, because they're fantastic people. I've really I know they're online friends, but it's like they've been very faithful followers. But through this whole process, what I started kind of finding was that I was watching the comments, and I would start seeing like people saying, "Hey, I've got one of those ribbons. Hey, I earned mine in 2007. I was with this group." Somebody else would say, "Hey, I was over there in 2007. Where were you at?" I started seeing connections being made. People were talking about their service. People were opening up and talking about it. And then I started hearing from a few of the clients reaching back and saying, "Hey, thank you for this." And I'm like, "Hey, thank you for the order." But they're like, "No, really, thank you, because this helped me open up." Jason, I got to talk about Jason Holch. Jason Holch has been a longtime supporter. He's one of my early clients, and with him personally, he's reached out several times. I've talked to him on the phone, and his message was, you got to understand, I really packed away a lot of these memories. And then he got out years ago, but then this all brought it back to the surface. So he unpacked a lot of it, but now he's looking at it with today's eyes. He's a father, he's a husband, but he's looking at it with today's eyes. He's at a different point in his life, and he's looking back on those memories, bringing them back out. And then he's kind of like, there's a reason I do things the way I do, and why I am the way I am sometimes, and why I'm not a big fan of fireworks shows or that type of stuff. And it kind of helped him. It helped him get a clearer understanding of it, but then also to open up to his wife, and help her understand. And I'm like, I'm just a woodworker, but but it really hit me, and I started realizing, like, okay, this is more than woodworking. This is a cathartic experience for our veterans. It's helping them look back at those memories, bring those boxes in their mind back to the forefront, open them back up, and look through those memories again, and look at it with today's eyes. And it's and like I always say in there too, Lindsay, I say, look, the ribbon racks that I build are not going to give you back sleep on those sleepless nights. They're not going to take away the bad memories. I can only hope it's going to bring back more good memories than bad ones. It's not going to take away the nightmares. I wish they did. I wish that what I was building here would do that. I'm just a woodworker. It's up to individual interpretation of what they see and what they feel when they have this ribbon rack, or even when they just watch online, and just watch me build them and watch the care that I'm putting into it, I hope that it makes them feel just that much more proud of their military service, and maybe think of it a little bit differently, and bring back better memories than bad ones. That's all I can really hope. For Jason Holch, that's exactly what it did. And I think that helped in those certain areas of his relationship with his wife, kind of solidify that and helped her understand, like, oh, okay, this is why you are, certain things might be triggering for him, or certain things, he shies away from certain things, or he's a certain way about, there's a reason he's checking 3 times every night to make sure the door's locked. It's right. There's little things like that. And I think that helped him express that to her when he went back through those memories and dug all that up. So he's still incredibly thankful for that. And I don't think his story is isolated. I think there's several of them that have had that similar experience. I know there have been. There's been people that have reached out and said, this has really helped me, it really hits me, it really hits me. It's a surreal feeling in the shop, when you, it's hard to describe. It really is, but I might really be helping people. You
definitely are.
I might really be helping. Just to think of it in that terms, I'm just a guy in his basement wood shop. But what if these are helping people? I started to really kind of open my mind to that possibility, and it's like, God, I sure hope so. I really do hope so. So I hope it's helping more than I realize. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I hope people keep watching, and it brings back better memories than the bad ones. And maybe it causes them to reach out to those old battle buddies that they served with when they got those ribbons. They might make those connections like, hey, it's almost Christmas time. God, I was over there in 2008 at Christmas time. I wonder where those guys are. I used to hang out with this one guy all the time. I wonder where he's at these days. It might make a connection. But I've seen connections be made right in the comments. People are talking about when they've been over there. And it's really neat to see. And that's why I said earlier, I don't think I could have designed this if I wanted to. It's just something that it's an organic thing that just kind of grew up and became this. And with the help of my family, my ribbon rack family, we call it each other. It's kind of formed into this. It's just a positive, supportive environment where, we don't talk politics, we don't talk religion, there's some off limit things, but it's really cool. It's really cool. And it's something that I just kind of marvel at it sometimes. Like I couldn't have built this if I tried to. I'm so happy. It's been kind of to quote Bob Ross, it's been kind of a happy accident.
Which, by the way, I did see you were Bob Ross on your social media at one point.
The look on my wife's face when I opened up an Amazon box and I pulled out a Bob Ross wig, she thought, oh my gosh, what are you doing now?
You're like, it's okay. It's for TikTok. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you think that social media then has a positive impact on the veteran community? Like, how do you think other people outside of you even can leverage it in a more positive way?
They really have to be intentional about that. I really believe that. I fully believe it's possible. I'm experiencing it with my live sessions, but I believe if they're intentional and committed to that and making it positive and supportive and keeping, steering away from those controversial topics and not just use it for a platform to do other whatever. If they're intentional about making it a positive thing, I think it's, God, I think there's so many possibilities out there. I think there's so much market for that type of thing. I think there's so much desire for that, for people to come online and not just see, not just see goofy stuff or stuff that's I'm trying to find the proper words for it. I think you know what I mean. The content out there that's just okay. You just keep scrolling past it. I want people to come across my lives or my videos and pause and look at it and I'd like to feel that it has an impact on them, or that they'll stay and watch the lives and listen and kind of see the content that's coming through the comments and like, hey, this is a neat environment. This is a neat place. I think other creators could do that if they choose to. I know there's other ones out there that are having they're trying to make their little piece of the world a little better, a little brighter, and I applaud them. I just wish I wish there was so much more of that. And I would like to believe that this is what social media could really be used for if people were intentional about it and committed to that. Instead of just, there's so much garbage out there. There's so much stuff that just, it's like this isn't helping anybody but the creator to get likes and clicks, but like you could probably leverage this. And, one of the things is that I also like to say on there, it's an opportunity to be on that platform to say, look, veterans, don't let the demons write your final chapter.
Yeah.
Because, and I try to use that. I think that's a positive message to tell them and just say, hey, look, you could be having PTSD issues and you don't really realize it. You could be struggling with finances. You could be struggling with your employment. You could be struggling with any aspect of your life and not realize that it's actually PTSD creeping in. That's something that we like to talk about and bring up in our lives and talk about that. And just like, look, it's not a sign of weakness to go and get help and to talk to somebody and to talk to us. I've literally stopped a live one time because a guy came in and he was making some comments on there. He was struggling. He was having a hard time. And I said, all right, everybody, I'm done for today. I need to talk to somebody. And I messaged that guy and said, what's your number? And we talked for a couple hours and he was having a pretty tough time. And I kind of stayed in touch with him for a bit there, and he was at a pretty dark spot. And I'm not a therapist, but I was just trying to be a friend and be a set of ears for the guy. I think that's just what he needed. He just needed someone to listen. Yeah. Like I can do that, but that's what we do in the lives, and we make sure that we kind of reaffirm that to people and just, hey, we're here. And so many other people in the lives in my Ribbon Rack family have offered that and said, look, if you're struggling, but we're at the holidays again, and that can be a tough time for our battle buddies, and just people we served with, or even ourselves, and just to recognize that and say, hey, it's not a sign of weakness. You're not, it's okay to open the door a little bit and to talk to somebody. Don't let the demons write your final chapter, because they're going to write it how and when they see fit. That pen belongs in your hand. You've got a lot more to write. Our military service was one chapter in our book, and our book goes on. It keeps going on. We have so much more to write. That pen belongs in your hand. And that's the message that I share with them. And just, but if you're having trouble taking that pen back, please talk to us. We're here, and there's so many in the ribbon rack family that echo that same thing. And just, it's really a beautiful thing to see. And I wish that so many more would follow that and do that type of stuff, that specifically, to make sure that those veterans, if they're struggling with that type of stuff, with PTSD after the service, and, it's, hey, there's other veterans out there that are not unlike you. They're here to help you. It's at least be a set of ears for you, and maybe encourage them, like, hey, maybe seek some help, and I mean, we try to help with what we can. We recognize we're not licensed, but therapists or anything like that. But, it's sometimes people just need a friend and a set of ears.
Absolutely.
And that's what we try to make the lives about. I'll be playing some music. I try to get a decent, Thursday night's country night, and every other time is rock and roll, or, some type of music mix that I put together, and I'm over here working, or sometimes I'm chatting with the live. And, but it's just it's a neat place. And then it kind of developed into 4 times a week, pretty regular schedule. And it's just become this beautiful thing. And I'd like to think that we've been beneficial to people that have found us, in kind of a barren landscape, what it seems to be a barren landscape sometimes out there in social media world, or it's like to find a little gem where it's like, hey, this is kind of cool. And there's some good people in here. It's not just a bunch of garbage all over the place in TikTok. And there's actually some good stuff out there. I just wish more people would leverage social media for that. And what would the world be like if more people were intentional about doing good?
Amen. Couldn't agree with you more. So one thing I did want to touch on before we start wrapping it up, do you also make ribbon racks for first responders and other professions as well? Talk about that if you do. Yeah? Okay.
I sure have. I always tell people, yes, however. So I just say, however, I need to see those ribbons, because the law enforcement ribbons, they're even further removed from the mil spec stuff. Usually, even like the state stuff, it's not. I can't find a mil spec document for the state ones, even like the Air National or Army National Guard. So like law enforcement, firefighters, their ribbons, they're made by the manufacturers. Kind of set the standard on those. Whoever the vendor is that's making those ribbons, or the bars, or whatever they're making. So I always have to say, like, I need to see them first. So, but yes, the short answer is yes, but I have to see them first to make sure that I can replicate it. Because if it's something that I don't feel confident that I can do a good job on, I won't even take it. I have turned down one so far that I told actually two so far, where it's like, I can't replicate this, and I don't think that my attempt is going to be as good as I could do. I unfortunately have to decline the job, and I felt really bad about it, but it's like, bottom line, when I build something, if it leaves my shop, it's got to be something that I would be proud to hang on my wall if I had earned those ribbons. It's got to be right. It's got to be my best effort. It's got to be something that I feel confident that, like, look, I could put this up against anybody else's attempt, and I think mine's gonna hold its own. So that kind of drives where I feel, so I know I'm kind of going long on that answer. I apologize.
No.
But I do other ribbon racks, but I got to make sure that I can do them properly. I've even been asked for overseas ones, like Australia and Britain. And usually I'm not set up for those. I'm sorry, I can't. Plus, it'll probably cost an arm and a leg to ship them over there. So
sure. Yeah, because they are big. If you're not watching, I mean, these are how large are they usually, like, wise?
Great. Yes, great point. The dimensions of each ribbon is 12 inches wide by 3 1/4 inches tall. Now that's coming from a 1 3/8 wide ribbon that you wear on your chest. It's 3 inches tall. So I did the proportions, did the scaling on it to get to the 12-inch wide. And people are like, well, do you do smaller? Well, no, because there's small pieces and I want to keep my fingers. But they're pretty sketchy cuts sometimes when I'm making small. There's pieces that I cut that are like 72 thousandths nominal thickness. So they're pretty small. Wow. Yeah, they start getting tiny. But the overall ribbon rack itself then would be on I always do a 3 wide configuration all the way up, and then I center the top 1 or 2, depending on how many ribbons. But the full width with the frame is 37.5 inches wide. And then the height just depends. Figure about 3 7/16 inches per row, plus 1.5 inches for the frame, top and bottom. I got a 30 ribbon rack that's pretty big over there, so that's 37.5 wide by about 37 or 38 inches tall. So it's pretty big. Huge ribbon rack, takes up the whole bench there. But yeah, so that's the size of them. And then each, as we mentioned earlier, each color is a separately cut piece of wood. So it's like, say, for example, in the National Defense ribbon, the four little stripes on either side of the yellow band in the middle, those are all about 0.27, and that's small. It's, for something that's 3¼ inches long and being 0.27 wide, it's a little sketchy. The saw will throw them sometimes. So it's a little dangerous in the shop sometimes, but it's all safe. It's all safe. It's
Okay,
under
good.
control, but it's sometimes it'll, depends on the grain of the wood, it'll kind of throw them,
Sure.
but yeah, they're amazing to build. They're fun to build. I get to learn the stories of the veterans. The tribute videos, I've unfortunately had to start slowing down with some of those because I've gotten so busy with orders. So now right now I'm focused on doing the tribute videos for the Gold Star families and Medal of Honor recipients. That's where I'm at right now. But yeah, the people keep coming back. Many clients come back and I love it. Thank you so much. We've had some surprise videos. The hardest part, honestly, with this too, is that when I ship them off, I never get to see that reveal. I never get to see the person see it for the first time in their hands.
Right.
But there's been a few folks out there that have been, they allowed themselves or recorded themselves opening the package when they received it. And I love that. We had one recently, Jason, his name is Jason. The client was Jason. He was he served in the Navy as a corpsman with the Marines, and he had a pretty impressive ribbon rack. He also ordered one for his uncle, who was a Vietnam veteran. His uncle had no idea. And Jason was actually not able to attend it. He had family members record it. And that video I posted with that gentleman opening up his ribbon rack, and he got emotional when he realized what it was. And keep in mind, how we received so many, the stories that I've heard of how the veterans came back from Vietnam and, the popularity and whatnot, all those things that happened. For him to open that up and just have his ribbon rack in such large scale, so beautifully done, and he was just, you could tell it struck him. And as I got to see that then, I like being able to see that. Most of the time I don't, and it's kind of the downside of it, but I love seeing that reaction.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like how rewarding that is for you to spend all this time building something and then be able to see somebody's reaction to that creation. I mean, incredible. So
Yep.
Somebody's listening and they want to order. How do they order?
They go to ribbonracks.com, ribbonracks, RAX.com.
Okay.
And just go there, click on contact and send a message that says, hey, I'm interested in a quote. And then that comes into my email and I'll reply and say, thank you for reaching out. Please send a picture, a detailed list, or a screenshot, and I'll get you a quote. And I like to have, it's by design. There is no way to go to my website and click on something and order it. That is by design. I like to have direct communication with my clients because every ribbon rack is custom. Every single one of them is custom. They're all unique. So it's, and I like to have that direct communication if I have questions about their ribbons, because I do get sometimes where the family members want to do it as a surprise, and I'm always emailing back saying, "Are you sure all the ribbons are here? You sure these are all of them?" And
Right.
And the other situation is like, "Hey, I want to get this for my husband's retiring in a few months, and I want to get this for the retirement ceremony." Like, I wouldn't do that. As much as I want to build a ribbon rack, I want to do the right thing. I want to make sure it's completely correct. And so I'll tell them, it's like, they can get an award up until their last day of active duty. And honestly, people after active have found out that certain ribbons were made retroactive for them. So I encourage anybody that wants to reach out, if they come to the website and want to get a ribbon rack, please do go through your paperwork and make sure you have all the ribbons that you earned. If you were there in certain spots at certain times, just double check, maybe reach out to your former teammates and say, hey, did we qualify for this? Or, even start with a conversation like that, just to make sure your list is correct. Because when we build this, I want to make sure I'm building 100% correct. And that way, when you get it, you're going to be completely proud of it on your wall.
Yeah. And where can people find you on TikTok and other social media platforms, of course?
Kevin Heilman Woodworking. It's a long one. It's Kevin Heilman Woodworking. So it's just search for that. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok under that same name, Kevin Heilman Woodworking. TikTok I've got a lot more followers on there than any other platform, and that's where most of my content is. I do have content on those other platforms as well, but TikTok is really the one where I have the most of it and most current and up to date. But yeah, it's and the video that went really viral, it's the only one that has so many videos, is like we talked earlier about the Albert Jex video.
Yeah.
Over 1.2 million views. Just a couple of quick things on that I wanted to state as you watch that. It's a 3-minute video that starts with dialogue with myself. Literally, the story is I was struggling to make the video for how Albert Jex died. How do you say thank you for your service to an individual like that? And his story is not uncommon. Others that went that 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 fell in action under similar circumstances. Thank you for your service seems to really fall short. And I was really struggling with that. And I threw away about 15 hours of video work before that. And I finally just came down to the shop one night, kind of exasperated and just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just turned on the camera and started rolling. And so it was unscripted. It was just me. I set up a scene where I come down the stairs and act like I'm talking to myself. But there's a key point in that video, and I want to make sure that the listeners and viewers of this understand, and I think this all happens all too often, and this kind of ties into what we talked about earlier with veterans. At one point, I start off the dialogue and I say, hey, man, and I reply with, hey, you all right? And so I ask myself, and then I don't answer. I think that happens far too often. And to tie into earlier, to kind of dovetail into earlier, if someone asks, if you see a buddy, or if you have a buddy that doesn't quite look right, and you ask them and they don't want to talk, because then the dialogue continues. I say, well, whose ribbon rack is that in the video? So I switch and I find a different vantage point to try to get the door open and get that person talking. I think that happens far too often among the veterans. So if you see that with a friend, don't give up. They might be struggling with something and you just might need to shift and find a different vantage point. So that's in that video. It wasn't by design. It resulted from the edit, and I watched it, and Lindsay, I cried when I watched the edit. I put the music to it. The song is also very important. That was the reason that it is Simple Man by Lynyrd Skynyrd. The reason that I chose that song is because it has special meaning between Albert and Kathy, his mom. She said that Albert always told her that the song reminded him of her. So she requested, when you do the video, if you could do it to that song. And I said, absolutely. And so that was a couple of things I want to put in that video speak about.
And I want to encourage the audience to watch that, because that's the video that came across my feed, and it is deeply moving and just a wonderful tribute. So outside of that, I know you had some shout outs you wanted to give. So would you like to give your shout outs now?
Yes, I would. We mentioned Jason Holtz earlier. I can't say enough good about Jason Holtz. And I won't say that's his full name on TikTok, so I can say that. So I'm trying to be mindful of there's, I'm going to draw a blank. There's Trina, Carissa, Will, Lori, Timothy, Albie. And these are their names on TikTok, so it's I'm not revealing personal information that's not there. PB is another person. Mike PA from Pennsylvania. They'll jump in the box sometimes and share pictures of their kids. It's literally become kind of a family. And those individuals that I mentioned, there's so many. They've been so supportive all this time. Kathy and Charlotte, Emily, and like I said, I couldn't have built this if I designed it. This all just fell together, and I'm so happy that this group of people, we've all found each other on these lives. It's pretty awesome. Blake, that's another individual. He's out there. It's that's all I can remember at the moment. But I wanted to give a shout out to folks, because without them, it's just, they're the ones that are always coming back and extremely supportive. They help answer questions. They engage the other folks that are coming through and saying, hey, thank you for your service. And it's because of them and because of some of the people. There's three things that I always say at the end of every live. Keep that regret list short. Never waste a day that someone else wished they had. And remember that tomorrow is another opportunity to be better than you were today. It's a journey, not a destination. Don't try to be better than anybody else. Just be better than who you were in the past. That's all we can really do. And those are the three things. They hear it every time. My RAC family hears it every time. And newcomers hear that. And through meeting all of them and hearing their stories and the ribbon racks that we've done has kind of formed up that message at the end of every live. So that's why I wanted to shout them, give them that shout out and recognize them and thank them. I love them all. I've spoken to several of them on the phone. We've kind of, even though we've never met in person, actually there's a few that I have met in person up in Minnesota here, but some great people out there. It's restored my faith in humanity. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being a guest. I really, really appreciate it. This has been incredible. I know you say you're just a woodworker. You've said that many times, but you are so much more than that, and you're doing incredible things. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. We'd love to have you back on at some point to just revisit this and see where you are then.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our time. Thank you.
Yeah, and to all our listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel on Shots from the Winchester. Please follow Kevin on his social media accounts, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this content to be useful and entertaining, do us a favor and hit the like button. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. You can stay up to date with new episodes that we post every week. See you in the next episode.